You're not losing everything. God is stripping what doesn't belong. There are moments in life when it feels like the ground beneath our feet gives way, when the things we thought were permanent begin to crumble without warning. We look around, and everything seems to be falling apart. People leave. Opportunities vanish. Doors we once walked through with confidence now remain shut, cold, and silent. And in those moments, a deep fear rises. Am I losing everything? It's a terrifying question, because loss often feels like death, a death of stability, of identity, of hope. We pray, we plead, we search for reasons. Why is this happening to me? We ask, as though we've been cursed or forgotten. The truth is, you are not losing everything. You are not cursed. You are not forgotten. In fact, you are being refined. Let that truth sink in for a moment. What looks like chaos may actually be order in disguise. What feels like rejection may actually be protection. And what you interpret as loss could very well be a divine act of preparation. You see, we often build our lives around things that were never meant to last. We hold on to relationships that drain our spirit, careers that steal our peace, and patterns of thinking that limit our growth. And when these things are taken from us, it hurts, because we've built our sense of self on what was never meant to be permanent. But here's the thing. God is not interested in your comfort if it comes at the cost of your calling. There is a holy stripping happening. It's not the end of your life. It's the beginning of your alignment. What is being removed is not essential. It is excessive. It is what doesn't belong in the next chapter of your story. God, in His mercy, is not punishing you. He's pruning you. He's removing what would only weigh you down. What you thought you needed was actually holding you back. And the more you resist the process, the longer it takes for you to walk into the life that was meant for you all along. This is not destruction. This is divine discipline. This is not punishment. This is preparation. And yes, it's painful. Growth always is. The seed doesn't become a tree without breaking through the soil. The gold doesn't shine without going through the fire. And you don't rise without something being stripped away. So today, I invite you to look at your losses not as signs of failure, but as signals of transformation. You're not being buried. You're being planted. You're not being broken down. You're being built up. This is not the end. It's the beginning of something holy. The illusion of loss, when everything feels like it's falling apart. There comes a season in every person's life when the winds shift suddenly, violently, and without warning. One moment, everything feels secure. Your job, your relationships, your plans, your confidence in the direction you're headed. And the next, it's as if the very fabric of your life begins to unravel. You wake up and realize that what you depended on is no longer dependable. The phone call doesn't come. The opportunity vanishes. The person you loved walks away. The path you were so certain of dissolves into dust beneath your feet. It is in that precise moment that many people begin to spiral. We panic. We grasp at what's slipping away, thinking if we just hold on tighter, we can keep the pieces intact. But life has a strange way of teaching us that not everything broken is meant to be fixed. Some things fall apart because they were never meant to stay. Some doors close not because of failure, but because they no longer lead where you're supposed to go. Yet still, we fight the process. We mourn, we question, and we feel as though we are losing everything that matters. But here's what I want you to understand. What feels like loss may, in fact, be liberation. And what looks like chaos may be the beginning of divine order. You see, we often misinterpret disruption as destruction. We assume that the shaking means collapse, that the silence means absence, and that the loss means we are no longer favored. But could it be that what is leaving your life is simply clearing space for what was always meant to arrive? Could it be that what you're holding on to is actually delaying your breakthrough? We rarely consider that the storm we fear is not sent to kill us, but to cleanse us. That the fire is not to destroy us, but to refine us. We live in a culture that teaches us to accumulate, to cling, to possess. We are taught to equate success with how much we can gather and hold on to. But in the spiritual realm, growth often requires subtraction before it brings multiplication. You must lose what doesn't belong before you can receive what was ordained. Just like a tree must shed its dead branches before new growth can sprout. Your life, too, must be pruned so that it can bear fruit. Loss is never easy, and I will never stand here and pretend that heartbreak doesn't hurt or that disappointment doesn't sting. But the pain isn't always the enemy. It can be the messenger. It is trying to show you something. It is trying to tell you that you've outgrown where you've been, that your identity can no longer be rooted in things that are temporary, fragile, and false, that your destiny requires a lighter load and a clearer path. God is not trying to harm you. He's trying to heal you. He's pulling you away from what you thought you needed so he can give you what he knows you truly do. But this process only works when we stop resisting and start surrendering. The problem is, most of us confuse surrender with giving up, but they are not the same. Giving up is driven by despair. Surrender is rooted in trust. Giving up is when you lose hope. Surrender is when you choose to believe there is still hope, even when you can't see it. Surrender is when you say, God, I don't understand what you're doing, but I trust that you know better than I do. I trust that what's leaving my life is not being stolen. It's being removed with purpose. You're not losing everything. It just feels that way because the things that are no longer aligned with your calling are being taken away. You're not being punished. You're being positioned. You're not being abandoned. You're being advanced. And yes, it's hard to believe that in the middle of the wreckage. It's hard to hold on to faith when everything around you is falling apart. But that's exactly when faith matters most, not when everything is going right, but when nothing makes sense. If you look back over your life, you'll likely see moments where you thought it was the end, but it was only a beginning in disguise. The relationship that broke you led to the healing that built you. The job you lost led to the opportunity that changed your life. The betrayal that shattered your heart taught you boundaries, discernment, and strength. And the moments you felt most alone were the very moments God was closest, removing distractions, quieting the noise, and drawing you back to Him. This isn't the first time life has shaken you, and it won't be the last. But if you allow it, the shaking will serve you. It will strip away the false identities you clung to. It will break apart the illusions you believed in. And it will reveal the unshakable core of who you really are, the person God always intended you to become. So I ask you, instead of fearing the loss, can you embrace the lesson? Instead of cursing what's leaving, can you give thanks for what's being cleared? Can you trust that this is not a random falling apart, but a holy dismantling of everything that no longer belongs? Because when you do, you'll realize something powerful. You are not falling apart. You are falling into place. This is not the death of your story. It is the death of a chapter that was never meant to last forever. What feels like an ending is really a redirection. And what seems like loss is only the first step toward a deeper, more purposeful life. You are not losing everything. You are shedding what was never truly yours. And on the other side of that shedding, there is freedom. There is clarity. There is peace. There is power. And most of all, there is purpose. Divine intervention. God isn't punishing you. He's protecting you. It's human nature to see loss and hardship as punishment. When life begins to unravel, when the people we trust walk away, when the plans we carefully constructed fall to pieces, we instinctively assume we've done something wrong. We cry out, "Why is this happening to me?" And somewhere deep inside, we wonder if maybe we're being punished. Maybe we've disappointed God. Maybe we've fallen too far, strayed too long, or failed too many times. But I need you to hear this truth today, louder than your fear, louder than your pain. God is not punishing you. He's protecting you. We often forget that protection doesn't always feel like comfort. Sometimes, protection looks like disruption. Sometimes, protection feels like pain. Sometimes, the very things you're begging God to bring back are the things He removed to save you. Not because He wanted to hurt you, but because He saw what you could not see. You were praying for peace, but still clinging to chaos. You were asking for purpose, but refusing to let go of people who had no place in your future. You were desperate for direction, but insisting on your own map. So God, in His mercy, not His wrath, stepped in and rearranged your life. You see, when a parent pulls their child away from traffic, the child may cry, scream, and resist. To the child, it feels like punishment. But to the parent, it's protection. That's what divine intervention often looks like. It feels abrupt. It feels confusing. It doesn't make sense at first. But over time, we begin to see it differently. We begin to see that God removed us not from blessing, but from danger. He closed a door not to torment us, but to keep us from walking into destruction. You may not realize it now, but the heartbreak you endured protected your soul. The job you lost protected your calling. The silence you experienced protected your growth. What you called betrayal, heaven called deliverance. And what you called loss, heaven called mercy. There are things in your life that you thought were essential, but in God's eyes, they were attachments that needed to be released. We often hold on to what's familiar, even when it's toxic. We fear the unknown, even when it's holy. But God doesn't operate on comfort. He operates on calling. He's not interested in leaving you where you feel safe. He's interested in taking you where you'll be sanctified. And that journey, my friend, often begins with a disruption. Let me ask you, what if unanswered prayers were actually the greatest blessings you never saw coming? What if the no from God wasn't rejection, but redirection? What if the loss you feared the most saved you from a lifetime of compromise? We don't like when God takes things away, but sometimes He takes away because we're settling for less. Sometimes He strips us not to break us, but to rebuild us from a stronger foundation. A foundation not built on people, positions, or pride, but built on truth, character, and purpose. What we mistake as abandonment is often alignment. What we call suffering is sometimes sanctification. God's way is rarely the easy way, but it is always the right way. And while the process may be painful, the result is always peace. You are not forgotten. You are not forsaken. You are not being judged for your failures. You are being shaped for your future. There is a difference between consequence and calling. There is a difference between divine punishment and divine protection. God is not petty. He is not cruel. He is not sitting on a throne waiting for you to mess up so He can take everything from you. That is not His character. That is not His heart. He is a God of love, a God of purpose, a God of vision. And when He removes something, it is never without reason. If He's stripping something away, it's because it doesn't fit who you're becoming. If He's closing a door, it's because there's a better one waiting. If He's creating space in your life, it's because He's preparing you to receive something you're not ready for yet. The delay is not denial. The silence is not absence. And the struggle is not punishment. Some of God's greatest interventions come disguised as unanswered prayers. Some of His greatest gifts are hidden in the form of loss. And some of His most powerful acts of love feel, in the moment, like the most painful breaks. But with time, with healing, with perspective, you begin to see the hand of God not in what you gained, but in what you were protected from. There's a reason certain people didn't stay. There's a reason some doors never reopened. There's a reason you couldn't go back to what used to feel like home. Because God wasn't taking from you. He was saving you. And maybe, just maybe, He's saving you still. So if you're in a season where everything feels uncertain, I want you to remember this. God is still in control. The pain may be real. The confusion may be heavy. The loss may feel unbearable. But the hand that removes is also the hand that restores. The heart that breaks is the same heart that heals. And the God who allows the stripping is the same God who will clothe you in something far greater than you could imagine. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. You are not being buried. You are being planted. And soon enough, the very things that made you weep will be the foundation of your testimony. Trust the process. Trust the pruning. Trust the protection. Because one day, you'll look back on this season, not with bitterness, but with gratitude. And you'll realize that what felt like loss was actually the beginning of everything you needed. The stripping process, shedding ego, attachments, and false identity. By now, you may have started to understand that the losses you face are not always meant to destroy you. They are sometimes divine interventions, God's way of clearing space. But let's go even deeper. Let's talk about the uncomfortable, often painful, but necessary process that God uses to truly prepare you for your purpose. It's not just about removing the people or things in your life that don't belong. It's about stripping away the version of you that doesn't belong in the next chapter either. And that, my friend, is where it gets personal. Because we often believe the only things that need to go are external, relationships, jobs, habits. But God's refining fire doesn't just burn around you. It burns in you. It touches your ego. It touches your pride. It touches the version of you that was built on survival instead of surrender. The stripping process is not simply about subtraction, it's about exposure. It peels back every layer of identity that was shaped by fear, performance, people-pleasing, and pain. It confronts the masks we wear to be accepted, the titles we chase to feel worthy, the lies we believed about who we have to be in order to be loved. One by one, God begins to unravel those false foundations. Not to shame you, but to free you. Because you cannot step into your divine calling while clinging to a counterfeit identity. You cannot receive new vision with old eyes. You cannot carry a higher assignment while wearing the armor of your past. So, he begins to strip it all away, not because he's cruel, but because he knows you're more than who you've been pretending to be. That confident mask you wear, it's hiding deep insecurity. That independence you boast about, it's often just fear of abandonment dressed up in strength. That constant hustle and productivity, sometimes it's just a distraction from the emptiness you haven't wanted to face. God is not interested in the image you project. He's after the soul you've neglected. So he starts dismantling the persona you built to survive. He lets things collapse so your foundation can be rebuilt in truth. He takes you into the wilderness, not to punish you, but to strip you down to who you really are beneath the noise, beneath the applause, beneath the approval of others. And in that sacred place of solitude, something beautiful happens. You stop performing. You stop pretending. And for the first time, you meet you, the real you. The one God created long before the world told you who you needed to be. This process isn't comfortable. It's humbling. It's disorienting. It often feels like losing yourself. But in truth, it's the only way to truly find yourself. The version of you that emerges from the fire will not be the one that walked in. You'll lose the parts that were never meant to stay: bitterness, resentment, insecurity, envy, self-sabotage. And in their place, you'll gain clarity, strength, humility, and peace. And here's what's most incredible. Once God strips away what doesn't belong, what remains is unshakable. Because it's not based on image. It's not based on people. It's not even based on success. It's based on identity. Real identity. Kingdom identity. You'll begin to walk differently, not out of arrogance, but with quiet authority. You'll speak with conviction, not because you want to be heard, but because you finally believe what you're saying. You'll love yourself, not for what you do, but for who you are. And you'll stop settling, not because you're entitled, but because you now know your worth. The stripping process will teach you how to sit with yourself in silence and still feel whole. It will show you that the applause was never the point, that the validation of others was never the foundation, and that your value has never changed, no matter who left or what you lost. You'll begin to see clearly what used to blind you. What you used to crave, you now see as distraction. What you used to chase, you now recognize as chains. When the layers fall away, what remains is purpose. And it's important to remember that not everyone will understand this version of you. Some people like the you who played small, the you who stayed silent, the you who pretended to be someone you weren't just to keep the peace, but that you no longer exists. And while it may be painful to walk away from certain circles, the truth is, God never called you to fit in. He called you to stand out. He called you to rise up. And he called you to reflect his image, not the world's. So embrace the stripping. Let it do its work. Let it cleanse you of every false label you've carried. Labels like not enough, too broken, too much, or too late. You are none of those things. You are chosen. You are seen. You are called. And you are being prepared for something far greater than what you're losing. Every season of stripping is a sign that promotion is coming. God never prunes what he's not about to grow. He never refines what he's not about to release. And he never empties what he's not ready to fill. So if everything feels like it's being taken away, hold on. You're not being emptied to be abandoned. You're being emptied to be refilled with purpose, with identity, with clarity, with destiny. This is the holy stripping. This is the divine undoing that leads to divine rebuilding. And the version of you that will rise from this season, they will not be fragile. They will not be fake. They will be fire-tested. They will be faith-driven. And they will be free. Rebuilding with purpose, becoming who you were meant to be. After the stripping, after the shedding of all that was false, fragile, and temporary, there comes a moment, a quiet, holy moment, when the dust begins to settle. You look around, and everything is different. Everything feels unfamiliar. The things that used to define you are no longer present. The people who used to validate you have gone silent. The noise that filled your life has been hushed. And for the first time in a long time, you are standing face to face with something most people run from, yourself. It is in that sacred space that the rebuilding begins. But make no mistake, this is not a return to who you were before. This is not about going back to the old version of your life. That version of you had to die. What is rising now is something new, something truer, something aligned with heaven. You are not rebuilding to impress others. You are rebuilding to become who God always knew you were beneath the rubble of performance, pain, and people-pleasing. You see, when God strips you, it's not to leave you bare, it's to lay a new foundation. A foundation rooted not in external approval, but in internal conviction. A foundation that is not moved by storms, because it is built on truth. You begin to rebuild your identity not on titles, but on character. Not on image, but on integrity. Not on noise, but on knowing. And when you rebuild from that place, you are no longer building with fear in your hands. You're building with vision, with clarity, with purpose. Purpose becomes your blueprint. You stop chasing everything and start choosing what aligns. You stop begging to be seen and start walking as if you are already sent. Because now, you know you are. You know that you were not created to blend in, but to break through. You know that your pain wasn't random, it was required. You know that the wilderness wasn't punishment, it was preparation. And now, everything that broke you becomes the very material God uses to build you. Your scars? They become your testimony. Your silence? It becomes your wisdom. Your rejection? It becomes your redirection. And your pain? It becomes your platform. This is what it means to be rebuilt by God. He doesn't just put the pieces back together. He forms something entirely new. He takes what the enemy meant for evil and turns it into power. He takes the loss and turns it into legacy. He takes the silence and fills it with sound. The sound of purpose, the sound of authority, the sound of a life aligned with something far greater than success or status. You become someone who doesn't just survive storms. You carry peace within them. You become someone who doesn't shrink in the presence of uncertainty. You expand. Because now, you're not walking in your own strength. You're walking in your calling. And when you walk in your calling, you walk differently. You carry yourself differently. You don't need validation from others, because you have confirmation from above. You don't need constant applause, because your confidence is not in performance, it's in presence. God's presence. And when you rebuild with God, you don't build fast, you build strong. You don't rush ahead, you walk with intention. You take every lesson from your breaking and you pour it into your becoming. You use wisdom as your compass. You use faith as your fuel. And you stop looking backward, because everything behind you has served its purpose. It got you here, but it can't take you further. And now, you finally see, you didn't lose everything. You were freed from what was keeping you small. You weren't being punished. You were being aligned. And now that the fire has passed, now that the stripping has done its work, you can step into the fullness of who you were created to be. You were never called to stay broken. You were called to rise. So let this be your declaration. You will not rebuild with fear. You will not rebuild with bitterness. You will not rebuild with the ghosts of who you used to be. You will rebuild with truth, with courage, with peace, with fire in your spirit and purpose in your hands. And the next time life tries to shake you, you won't fear the storm. You'll remember the stripping. You'll remember the refining. You'll remember the wilderness that taught you who you are. And you'll stand firm, not because life is perfect, but because you are anchored in something that cannot be shaken. God didn't just rebuild your life. He rebuilt you. So walk in that. Speak from that. Live from that. This is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your authority. You've come through the fire. You've walked through the loss. You've survived the silence. And now, you rise. Not as who you were, but as who you were always meant to be.